I'll start recording now. We're quite a small group. If you're any objections to us kind of sharing this afterwards, drop me a line and we can sort that out. I will encourage you to kind of use the chat. And the final bit of housekeeping, I normally say sort of stay on mute, but we're a reasonably small group. Please feel free to reduce the noise, but also feel free to unmute and ask lots of questions.
Bruce, can I say one thing before you start?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Chris. Unless you want to appear on camera on the webinar, you might want to turn your camera off. We'll keep our cameras on, but if you want to turn your camera off, it's some people feel a little bit
good point.
Uncomfortable being on YouTube with them sat there listening to a presentation. So it's probably easier if you turn your camera off, and then you've only got the three of us. But if you do want to turn your camera on, ask questions, and particularly at the end, then more than welcome to. But some people feel uncomfortable.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, James. So listen, we've built this as a panel discussion, a chance to sort of share top tips and a question and answer. We've prepared some content, or rather, my two colleagues have prepared some content. So one way we could play this is that I just fire away and ask some questions. We've picked some questions which are, I guess, hot topics. These are things that we are finding ourselves talking to our own schools about, and also topics that we are talking to the schools outside our group that we're working with. So we can take that approach, which we're really happy to do. My preference, actually, and it's why we build this. We build this is not to lead on that, but if you guys are ready with some questions that you'd like us to address. A slightly riskier approach, of course, because it puts Dan and James and myself on the spot. But we'd love to sort of start with your questions and address the things that you'd like to see firstly. So if there's nothing, I will plow on and ask the chaps the questions we prepared. But I think our preference is to start with anything you'd like to address from the floor. I've got more than enough material with Dan and James to fill an hour, but as I say, yeah, love to address your questions to start with. So let's start with that. You're welcome to either unmute and talk and put your camera on, or do it that way, or use the chat. We've got this really useful function in Teams, which is the hands up function. So rather than everyone sort of asking me questions at the same time, perhaps if you've got something. Chris has got hands up. I can see you. Chris, would you like to speak verbally? I can see you're typing as well.
I deleted what I was typing because it was, and it looks like a similar, maybe a question that Pete's about to ask. Looking at on the chat there.
Yeah. Why don't you ask your question? It's forms related, is it?
It was forms related, kind of. It's on. It's a Teams question rather than 365, but we see them as the same in school because Teams is the way into 365 really. So using assignments, is there any really easy step-by-step guide for staff and then parents stroke children, bearing in mind we're primary school, in terms of accessing assignments, particularly the form side of it, the quiz? Okay. Any really basic step-by-step, easy, already produced guidance that's there for people to use? Okay.
I think yes is the short answer. Dan, do you want to take that? I'll bring up our website and our YouTube channel. But do you want to talk to that question, Dan? And I'll see if I can share some screens as well.
Yeah, certainly it's something we've been working on quite a bit, and there's kind of two angles really. We're mainly producing materials for teachers, but at the same time we are producing some materials targeted more at older pupils and parents. So in our materials, so on our EdTech demo site we have some resources, and one of those is about pupils getting hold of accessing Teams from a mobile device. And we're also looking, at YouTube video tutorials as well, which is where most of that kind of advice is, because we're finding that it's probably easier to do it via a video tutorial than a kind of a long PDF document with lots of screenshots. But where we can put things on a single page, I know Bruce has got the website open there. If you just look on Teams, Bruce, and from the drop down, you'll see there's a number of different, PDFs here. I mean, if we just take that one halfway down, it says Teams, how to access from an Xbox. Now, that isn't something we'd recommend, but it just shows the kind of resources we're producing based on requests from, our schools or other DSP schools where, they haven't got a device, a laptop or even a mobile phone. So these are the kind of resources we're producing. So this is just a quick step guide aimed at parents or older pupils who can read themselves. So there's another one there, Bruce, if I could just get you to go to Teams and how to join from a computer, there's a primary version. Let's do how to join a live lesson, primary version. That might be a good one for Chris to see. So these are kind of basic guides aimed simple one pager, and then to augment that, we've got the YouTube channel where there'll be an actual video taking you through those steps, in a 2-minute quick tutorial. So they're the kind of materials we've been producing, and basically we kind of encourage it. If we're missing the point or we're missing a resource, we encourage our schools to say, oh yeah, but I need something for this. And whilst we can't magic it up straight away, we do have kind of a workflow where we will produce new materials. So you're welcome, Chris, to if you think when you've had a look through and think, oh yeah, but if only we had a sheet on this or a video on that, we're happy to produce those as part of our offer to our schools. So yeah, it's a growing resource. I don't know if you just want to show quickly the YouTube channel, Bruce.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there as well. Let me just fire that up.
So again, these are organized in playlists, so you can find a particular topic. Obviously there's a general playlist with all the DSP resources, but there's also special playlists for forms and for other things as well. So hopefully that's a really useful resource for you and for all our kind of schools and people just generally. It's not locked down in any way, it's open access.
Oh, that's brilliant, thank you.
And I've shared in the chat the video I've shared is one that actually is very specific about using quizzes in assignments and how to do it. And the link to the resource I put in is that website that Bruce was sharing was showing you, which has got the resources and a whole series of resources in it as well. So both of those will help you with that.
Yeah, thank you.
So Chris, hopefully that's helpful. I'll stop sharing now. Just to say before we close at the end, I'll give all the links to all of these sites, and I'll also, if you like what you see today, as Dan says, the best way to sort of get access to that and a whole bunch of other help is to sort of sign up for the program. Really, the program's really flexible. So and it's entirely free. Rather than this sort of thing that we've opened up more broadly, we can work specifically with your school.
Lovely, thank you ever so much.
Great. So Pete, did you have something on forms just to ask as the next question?
I did, yeah. I hope it's something sort of specific that I'm allowed to ask.
You're welcome to ask anything, Pete. That's all right.
Brilliant. I'm really enjoying using forms. I used Google Forms at my last school, but my Office Forms seems just as great. One thing I can't quite work out is when you export your data, your responses to a spreadsheet, how you are able to keep that spreadsheet live as more responses come in, if that makes sense. I have managed to do it, but I have no idea how I've done it, and I can't recreate it again. So, for example, I'm a PE teacher. We did some fitness testing at the start of the term, where the kids were sending in their fitness test results via a form, and I wanted their spreadsheet that I was sharing with the department to update as their classes added their results throughout the week. And I know that is possible, but it says about starting it within OneDrive, and I can't work out how to do that.
Dan, do you want to take that? You're pretty hot on this.
Well, I think on that particular point, James had his hand up, and I'll let him go first.
Oh, did he? Sorry.
Well,
that's my poor hosting. I didn't notice.
No, I took it down very rapidly. But certainly the way that I would do it, if you want to get that live feed, and I think it's a while since I've done it, is if you start in Excel, you can create that live link so it auto feeds it. Now I'm just checking this at the moment while I bring up a spreadsheet. But if you within Excel, you can just waiting for it to go live. You can insert. There we go, a form. Now, Dan, do disabuse me or tell me I've got it wrong. But as far as I'm aware, I'm just going to. I'm hoping.
If I may, when I started sort of looking at this and trying to work it, I then went back to a few forms that I'd done previously, and actually they did then have the little cloud icon next to the Excel export button. So that was then allowing me to just export it from another forms, a few forms that I'd done that would have live data, and I tested it out. However, any new ones that I tried to create since, I can't work out how to turn that little cloud on.
And I suspect Microsoft moved the goalposts.
Right.
As they have a tendency to do. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, and you should be able to see the spreadsheet. So this is in Excel on the web, and I've gone to insert, and you'll see it says forms there. Can you see that?
I can't, but for some reason, when I had it on my phone, I can now. Yes, yeah.
So, and when I click plus new form, it then opens up a new form. And I'll just add a quick choice question. How are you? And I'll do a yes, no, because it gives me those nice and quickly. And I'll just do test. And that's fine. I'm happy with that. If I close, it's a while since I've done this, so I'm a little bit, so that should be all right.
Let's test this live, James. Let's really put money where our mouth is.
Yeah, well, it is.
Share the link in the chat and let's see if it works.
So I should be able to preview the form, and there we are. Click yes, submit. Responses has been submitted, and if I go to form, you'll see that
right.
It comes up. So if you want, I'll drop the link to the form. Go back. So I should be able to share. Let me make it anyone copy. This is really this is what I love about. It's almost like being a teacher again.
Let's try. Put it in the chat. Let's have a go.
There it is.
So Pete, do you want to have a go at answering that? If you got it, you can do it on your device.
Yeah.
Let's see if it might need to refresh possibly, but that should just feed through, shouldn't it?
Right, so I've got forms.
There we go. It's come through.
Yes. So I submitted my response.
So it's coming through straight away.
Perfect. That is brilliant. So basically, it's almost like doing it back, in reverse.
Yeah.
So as long as you start the form from
Absolutely.
the spreadsheet, then you will then be able to have those live updates.
And that is different how Google Sheets work. So if you go into forms and when you click the spreadsheet view, it fundamentally downloads a spreadsheet to your local computer each time you do that. So you don't get that live view. So whereas you do in Google Sheets. So it works slightly differently. So this workaround that James has shown you is the way to go if you want to analyze live data from your form.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I would assume then from that then there's no way to kind of reverse engineer it, I suppose. So if you've already made a form, you've kind of almost jumped the goalpost, so to speak. You won't be able to then link it to a live form.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Yeah.
It'll always when you do the open in Excel, rather than opening it on a cloud system, it downloads it. Whereas what you really want it to do is open it in the cloud. And for some reason, the way the forms are designed from that way round, it just downloads it to your downloads folder.
Yeah.
We just sense check that. So James, when you go into Excel and go to new form, is there the option of using an existing template?
That's what I was just thinking.
I don't think there is. Can we just have a look? This is really seat of the pants stuff, but that's the beauty of the Q&A.
So
yeah,
it only allows me to
make a new one. Okay.
To do a new one. Now, the only thing that I and the reason why I've started having a quick look at forms is these are shared ones, and it's whether on a shared one, one that you've put in that's a group form, and there are some differences with group forms, but I don't think you can do anything different with it. So certainly I'll have another look into it, but you are right, you used to be able to get a live link to that data.
Yeah, you did, because it said that the old ones that I hadn't really intended to do it, and going back looking at them, it's there. So I was like, someone's like, how did I do it without meaning to, and now I can't do it again? But that makes perfect sense.
So it's doing it this way. So you are in effect inserting the form into it, and that gives you your live link. And I suspect it's just because they've made it all live now.
Yeah. How did you get to? Hold on, just looking at my Excel. I've got a blank spreadsheet. Where is the form option? Is
insert. Are you in the browser or are you on the desktop?
I'm in the browser.
Yeah. So you go insert, and then you should see forms come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's have a look. Yeah, got it. Brilliant. Okay, that's fair. Thank you very much. That does answer a lot of questions. That's great.
Thanks, Pete. Chris, did you have your hand up, or was that the hand before?
Sorry, hand before.
That's all right.
There's a question from Sarah Bruce about share as a group form. Is it share the template? So this is a couple of things to bear in mind about forms is that you have a limit of 200 forms in your area. So once if you're setting lots of quizzes and you're running them out of your area, you'll very quickly hit that 200 form limit if you're not careful. But you can put forms, you can create what are called groups, and you can put forms into groups, and that's something the technical team needs to do. But when you've got a form, and if I go back to forms here, if you've got a form, and I'm still struggling with this because Microsoft keep on changing how it looks all the time, you'll see I've got some groups down here, and these are actually classes, but you can take a form, and he says off the top of his head, you can move it. So if I click on the three dots, I can move it, and I can move it into a group. So I've got let me see, a test staff team. So I could move it into that. It could just be a group, but here I've got a test, and I can then move it to there. And if I click move, it will take that form and move it somewhere else. So it comes out of my area and puts it almost into a holding area. There's a bit of work still to do on that. Microsoft, from my sort of back channel conversations with them, there is talk about increasing that 200 form limit because for teachers at the moment who are using it on a regular basis to check understanding, people are hitting or are concerned they'll hit that limit quite quickly, but you can move them out of your area to somewhere else. And so you may get your IT team to create a group that is doesn't have to have a team associated with it, just needs to be a group that has key stage 3 science, chemistry, key stage 3 science, physics, where you put the forms and then you can go and collect them when you want them. So you can then go, if I put that one into go back up a level and come down here, I put that into my test staff teams. If I go there is that form. I can, if I open it up, what I can do is, of course, go and share it by getting a duplicate. Duplicate means that when I get it, I will then just, so I get duplicate, I will copy that. I will go to a new page just so it splits out. I'll go paste and go enter. And you'll see it says duplicate this form and start to use it as your own. I can click duplicate it, and now I've created an exact copy of that, but it's gone into my area. You see it's called test copy. If I go to forms, you will see it now appearing as one of my new ones. It shows that one is in the test staff teams area, so it's not in my area, but it's one that I've got access to. So it sort of gives you an idea of how this starts to function. Yeah, forms is frustration at times because you think you got it nailed, and then they go and update the interface slightly. Yes, so something to keep on looking at. But that's the difference in duplicate, which is one way. If you want to collaborate on a form, though, if I go into this form again, if you want to collaborate, so you're working on it as a department, you want other people to edit it for you, you can go to share and you can get a link to view and edit. And if I share that with a couple of colleagues, they can go in and they can look at it and they can edit it and make changes to it. That's another way of working with forms if you want to collaborate together on a document or get someone to give you some feedback on it. And so we do that quite a lot as a team. Here's my form. Particularly when we're looking at doing feedback forms from webinars and things. Anyone got any other comments on it? And we'll go in and we'll either write a comment, or we'll go in and edit it, just so people can help work through that process. So I'll stop now, Bruce. You know what I'm like.
I was just going to get to the point where I was going to cut you off there, James. Thanks for that, James. So Sarah, hopefully that's answered your question. I should say I pressed record at the start for those of joiners, so we will we'll post this up on the website, and you can run through that answer and pause and try it for yourself when you get to that point. Good. Okay, so that was questions from a few people there. Welcome to new joiners. A few people joined just as James was talking there. So we're just taking, rather than present our own questions, top tips, which we do have, we're just taking questions from the audience. We've done a little bit on forms there and shared some of the resources that we've made online. Before I direct questions to James and Dan, any other questions from the audience? You're welcome to either put something in the chat or put your hand up metaphorically and ask us a question. If there is nothing, I will. I've got plenty I can ask James and Dan about, but really we wanted to address your burning needs. No. Okay. Well, listen, let me go to James first. So a real hot topic that we've been doing a lot of work on just these last few days, and it's a brand new feature to Teams, is Breakout Rooms. And I know James, not just with his Teams hat on, but with his safeguarding hat on, has been doing a lot of work on this. So James, do you want to just give us a little update on Breakout Rooms?
Yes, and Microsoft brought out an update on Friday, which is making me go back and check all of my FAQs. It's more about, so Microsoft brought out the new meeting, the meeting chat function and being able to disable it. Yeah. So I'm just doing a bit of work on that because people are coming back to me and saying children aren't getting chat in the breakout rooms. So breakout rooms, I think we educationally have some real benefit in terms of allowing children to talk to each other to discuss a particular topic, as you might do in classes. It may enable small groups to talk to each other about emotional well-being, so they can have a sort of a little group chat that they might have ordinarily had in school. So there's some benefits from it, and as an organisation, we're seeing that schools who are using breakout rooms are finding that they are very beneficial and support the learning. The bit that I always come from is, but what are the risks? As a large organisation, we need to be also conscious of what the risks are. So putting children into a breakout room where they may not have adult supervision does bring with it some risks, particularly where you might have parents also in the background, and it's being aware of what the dynamics are, not just of the children with each other, but also between the parents, because the parent might decide they want to get involved in the lesson because one child has been a bit rude to theirs and they feel that they've are going to intervene. So it's that bit as well when you think about the safeguarding side of things. But if you're setting the right tone in terms of this is what we expect when you go into the room, this is what we want to do when you go in there, and I'll be dropping in and out of the breakout rooms as you go along, just check it's going all right, is a good way of running those. One of the challenges is around what your default meeting settings are, though. So we enforce that everyone should be only the organizer should bypass the lobby, because that prevents people starting meetings early and also stops people gate crashing your lessons. We also ask that all but the organizer is an attendee by default, because it makes it much easier. You can invite other teachers or other adults in as presenters, and so they can come in and support you in your lesson. And remember that a presenter has rights such as being able to mute all, force mute, remove people, elevate people to presenter rights, and admit people through the lobby. So you don't really want children being presenters. But when you open up a breakout room, it inherits your default permissions. So if your default permissions are only the organizer is a presenter, then when people go into the breakout rooms, everyone will be an attendee until the organizer drops in and out of all of these breakout rooms to elevate people to be presenters. And so if you've got adults who are going in and supporting these sessions, you've got to be careful about how those settings are kept and transferred into the breakout rooms. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And the more I talk to schools, the more I have to go back and think again about how have I set it up and should I make some changes. So when you're using breakout rooms, yes, they're good. I think you just want to be acutely conscious of what rights people are inheriting when they go in. And therefore, how do you manage that? How often are you dropping in and out of the breakout rooms? Because it takes, although it says 10 seconds, it seems like a lot longer. And if you're trying to do a large number of breakout rooms, it can take up to 60 seconds for it to create the rooms. And when you close them down, it can take up to 60 seconds for them all to shut down properly and for your class to return to you. Small classes, quicker, large classes, longer. So when you're thinking about your timings, that's quite important. The nice thing about it, though, is chat persists. So you can, as the organizer, you can see the chat in all the rooms, so you can see what they're talking about. And if you encourage them to chat and write their comments in, you can see, are they engaged? I want you to write down what you're talking about, so that and maybe enable you to see how engaged they are. There are lots of little different things you can do, but I would not be using breakout rooms out the box straight away without having trialed it with a few colleagues first, as we did. We got a preview version of it, and I tried it with colleagues before I started using it more widely. And you want to try it with some colleagues first, see what it brings, what are the challenges, how am I going to overcome this problem, how do I overcome the allocation of people to rooms, because trying to allocate 30 people manually is very time consuming. So you'd want to do it randomly, but then you've got to go through and check your allocations. We're recommending no less than 3 in a breakout room. Because you don't really want one-to-one, because you end up with a he says, she says, or he says conversation, and therefore you probably want to have at least 3 in. I would go for more than 3, because sometimes it doesn't push people into breakout rooms because they're coming in on a device that isn't supported or they haven't updated Teams recently. So all these little nuances that shouldn't stop you doing it, but should help inform why you want to do it. And, you know, the guidance we've got coming from our regional directors is, yes, we think you should be using it, but in a nice, careful, safe manner. And I'll finish there, Bruce. And I've just seen something pop up on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, James. And just for those of you that are starting from scratch on breakout rooms, so I've put a little. This isn't ours. This is a Microsoft document. In the chat there, for those of you not familiar with them at all and what they are. So if you can imagine a regular Teams meeting like this, and then you press a button, and then you basically divide smaller groups of children into sub meetings. But I think the key point there is that the teacher can't be in all of those meetings at once. So we do see a real educational use. Don't get me wrong. You know, trying to replicate that, you know, turn to your partner and discuss type thing. But the bottom line is, is supervision, really. So sort of, you know, as James says, proceed with caution, and kind of see how you get on. But do use that link. It does tell you how to go about using them. So yeah, Shannon, thanks for your question. Haven't yet used Teams for live lessons. Is there a way to set a photo document page visible to students whilst they're waiting in the lobby? Help me out, guys. I don't think there is. No. I think what you could do is, clearly they would be in Teams. We make really good use of class Teams. So you know, they're in Teams by the nature of joining the call. So you could put a document in the files part of Teams, or, you know, link to it in the conversation. I was having a discussion with a colleague from Oxford yesterday who was they had bandwidth issues and were struggling with slide sharing, and he kind of said, you know, well, you know, can I make the PowerPoint available before, rather than just relying on sharing in the moment, and of course you can, because those files can be in the file section of Teams, and you can link to them in the conversation. So I don't, no, there isn't a way of doing it whilst in the lobby, but you could make it available elsewhere in Teams. I think is probably the best way of doing that.
I think the other way to do it, Bruce, is that when you are, so what I've done for the webinars is, you know, I join a couple of minutes early, I put a slide up, which for me is the holding slide, but for you could be your starter exercise. And then as you're working and letting people through the lobby and checking people off, they've got that starter exercise, which will be front and center for them. So they then got that to work with. So it might not be in the lobby, but the first thing they see when they enter the room is that starter slide. And if you're muting all and that sort of thing, that enables that to work through quite nicely.
Yeah, that's a good point, James, because we've done lots of work with our schools on, you know, sadly, like lots of organisations, we've suffered a little bit from this sort of worrying trend of lesson bombing. It's not been hugely disruptive, but because of that issue, we've done lots of work with our schools on how to use the lobby. I won't go into all of that detail now, but it's basically, you know, firstly, use the lobby. Make sure you sort of diligently check and let students in. And as I talk to educational colleagues, that does seem to be a good approach, you know, so let perhaps one or two in, have a holding slide up, which in teaching and learning terms would be your, you know, your do now task, greet the children, and that helps with that, what's the phraseology, dissolving the screen, you know, making it feel welcoming, making them feel a bit more like a normal classroom, you know, so dissolve the screen, welcome them in ones or twos or small groups, and then straight into the do now task, and then work down the lobby so that, you know, if there is someone in there that you're not expecting and really shouldn't be in your lesson, that you can just get rid of them. So yeah, those are some top tips. We've had to move quite fast on that and just sort of change our advice, and that approach seems to be working well in lots of our schools. Question from Pete there. Are we able to create I guess that's copy for each student in Teams like Google Classroom allows you to do? Copy, I assume, of a document, Pete. Is that what you mean? Do you want to unmute and just expand on that?
Yeah, sure. So we've put some files on Teams this term, because we are doing live lessons, so we have done since we started. And obviously, so correct me if I'm wrong. So when you put a file on Teams for a group, that is in effect a live document that they all have access to edit.
If you're in a class team, you've actually got two areas. You can do that. So, but you've also got the class materials section, which is a read-only copy. Okay. What is it you're trying to achieve? I think would be my
and I do apologise if I keep bringing Google up. I've come from a Google school. So what Google Classroom enabled you to do was when you, for example, you assign an assignment, there would be an option that said create a copy for each student. So if you had a work, for example, that you wanted them to fill in electronically, your options would be attach one copy or create a copy for each student. Is there a way that we can do that?
Yeah, there is. I'll let Dan talk to this in a minute. I know he's hot on this, but if you use a site, well, there are two workflows in Teams. One is Teams assignments, and it does exactly that. It doesn't work exactly the same way as Google Classroom, but it essentially achieves the same thing. So you're going to set some work, but when you set some work and dish it out to your class, you'd put a Word document in there as a template. And it would be fired back to you as their version of the template. Right. So that's one way of achieving it. Dan, there's another workflow in Teams, isn't there? Sort of class notebook. That might be another way of doing that. Do you want to just give Pete a quick headline on that?
Yeah, sure. I'll just share my screen.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we're seeing that now, Dan. Thanks.
Yeah, so if I upload a Word document as part of an assignment in that workflow, you can see I've got a new assignment here. At the end of the 3 dots, you can have a students edit their own copy. And as soon as you put that setting in, when they click on the assignment, it will create their own copy of your document. Right. So that's how you produce that in the assignment workflow. Right. Alternatively, you could use, it's more of a manual process, but in the files, Bruce was saying these class materials, that's a non-editable copy. So children could, copy and paste it to their own area or whatever.
And download their own version of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another way. And you've also got Class Notebook, which is yet another workflow, and it's where basically each class team comes provisioned with a class notebook, or you can create a class notebook using the app outside of Teams. And what that enables you to do is kind of organize the work for them. If I just open this in the browser, although the desktop version gives you a little bit more functionality for the purposes of this kind of workflow idea, yeah, the browser's fine. So here, the teacher worksheet, I'm not sure if people are familiar with Class Notebook, but basically the teacher gets areas for their content, which are read-only content, or they get teacher-only areas, which children don't see. And you basically have a, content library here where you put all your worksheets. So might be working on a poem or whatever it is. This is in the content library. It's read only for students, but each student also gets their own section where only they and their teacher can access. But you've got quite a nice workflow in Class Notebook. When you click on the Class Notebook icon, is that in distributing pages. So if you've got a worksheet, you've only done it, you only have to do it once. You create it in your teacher only or content library, and then you distribute that out by clicking on distribute the page. And then basically over on the right hand side, you get an option to choose the students you want to distribute it to and where you want it distributed. So let's say this is an English piece of work. I want to send this to all pupils. And I click on distribute, and basically that then churns away in the background, copying that to every pupil that you've chosen, and I chose all of them. I've got a little done, and then if I open up pupil 3 here, obviously the teacher gets to see all of the different sections here, and you can see I've got that page. I must have already done it once before on a demo, but you can see how that page gets, and this is editable by the pupils, whereas the content library wasn't. So you've got a number of different ways of achieving that, either through Class Notebook, which is quite nice for students because it really helps them organize their work. They only have to go to one place. So you might use Class Notebook for assignments where, all the assignments get put, so they don't have to kind of think, oh, where was that assignment? It's all organized for them. But you've also got those Teams workflows, the assignments where you can, make an editable copy for the student. So hopefully that answers your question, Pete, with a few options.
Yeah, thank you. So the distribute option, does that only become an option when you open Note in a browser tab? Because we've started using it this week, having a play, and I think we're building our knowledge on it. But so the distribute option only opens when you open OneNote further. Am I correct?
Yes, you'd come out of Teams browser, and either the desktop, OneNote for Windows, or just open in browser. I mean, the team, generally speaking, I'd recommend the Teams is good. The Teams window is good for a quick view, but as soon as you want to start editing a document or doing a bit more with it, I would generally recommend opening it, in the browser, or, depending on the limitations of the browser. Generally, we're finding the browser's good enough for nearly everything, but in OneNote, for example, text recognition doesn't work in the browser, but it works on the desktop app. So there may be the odd feature that you need, but for most purposes, I would recommend opening browser, do what you have to do, and just use the Teams for a quick preview, if you see what I mean.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's really helpful.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Pete. I think we've probably got time for a few more questions. So any further questions from the audience, or I'll fire away with my next one to Dan and James. Just watching the chat there for stuff coming through. James is typing. James, you're supposed to be answering the questions, not asking the questions.
I was just going to put Mike Tholson's top 18 OneNote class notebook tips and tricks.
Okay.
Who's Microsoft's guru on all things Office 365. He gets a bit carried away.
He does.
And can be a little bit narrow. He doesn't always look at all the gotchas. But he's very good at giving you an idea of what's possible. But I would always suggest that you go back and look at not only what might be possible that you don't want to happen.
He is very, very knowledgeable, very active, and very, very good at sharing on Twitter. But he does work for Microsoft, so you get it sugar coated, don't you? But it's always good to, as you said before, try it with colleagues before you try it with students, because they will find the back door. But yeah, no, really, really useful chat to follow generally, particularly on OneNote and Teams, actually. And very, very active in the UK EdTech community and all around the world. Okay, where should we go next? James, just on the lobby, I was talking about kind of lesson bombing, and I wouldn't say it's a big issue, but we certainly had to sort of cope with that within our group, particularly in those first couple of weeks in January when schools closed and live lessons sort of took off stratospherically overnight. Do you want to just give a flavour of perhaps the issues and some of the solutions that we've put in for that? For those of you not familiar with the term, this is not unique to Teams, by the way. We've seen schools in the media using Zoom or the Google equivalent. Just getting people not necessarily in lessons, but making it as far as the lobby and people that really shouldn't be there. As in not the members of the class. So. Do you want to just talk to that point, James? We've probably got 5 minutes on that.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to open up PowerPoint. I'm going to share PowerPoint, but I do have one particular slide that I used on that day, and just to on a webinar that I did, and I'm just going to share that slide now, or that page now. So what you should see now is just a page on a PowerPoint, and one of the challenges with PowerPoint, with Teams, is that if you join from an Android phone at the moment and you haven't logged in, as this person on the right has done, you'll notice it doesn't say guest or anything on it. It just says James. So I can put any name I want in. So I could have put James Garnett in, and it would have looked very similar to someone who was in school. So I could put a student's name in, but unless you're looking at that presence information, you would think, oh, it's the right person, and you let them in, and it turns out that they're not really who they say they are. What you're always looking for when you are inviting people into your lessons is you're looking for this presence dot. So I've got a red dot there and a red dot there. So those people are in my organization. These are not. So this view here is from the app. This view here is from the web browser. And frustrating, you'll notice they look different. So in the app, Windows app, it says outside your organization. Here it doesn't say anything. Here it says guest, because this person is joining on a web browser, not through an Android or iOS app. And Microsoft therefore recognizes and will say you're a guest. So it says guest, don't want to invite them into my lesson. And here it's still a student, but he's not in my organization. Therefore, I don't want to let them in. So that's how it looks on the Windows app. This is how it looks on the browser. And really what you're looking for is what color is the dot. Whether you're looking at on the app or the browser, you're looking, do they have a red dot? And it should be a red dot because they're trying to come into your lesson, so they're in a meeting. But you may well see people with green and yellow ones. But generally you're looking for a colored dot, red, green, yellow, which indicates they've logged in to Office 365, either in your tenant, either one of yours, or they're part of a trusted organization, such as we have in United Learning, where we trust the schools in the group, but at least you know you can track them down. These ones without a presence dot, a colored presence dot, or this one, you can't track down because it's very hard to work out who they are. So I wouldn't let them in. And that's probably enough, Bruce. But yeah, but that's part of Bruce's piece about, and then you're inviting them in and saying, good morning, James, good morning, John, good morning, Jane, and invite as they come into the lesson, so you know who you're bringing in. And at least this way, you should be fairly sure you've got the right person. Unless, of course, the students are sharing credentials, which should be against your acceptable use policy, and you wouldn't expect that to happen.
Yeah, thanks, James. And yeah, I was just going to reinforce that last point. We've done some work, really, I guess, pastoral assemblies more than anything else with our schools, just to reinforce things that we would have said anyway around well, two key points: logging in rather than joining as a guest. Clearly, not sharing things like usernames and passwords, which have been a big part of the internet safety message for a long time. And also not sharing links. We've become a society with just hundreds of these calls and Zoom calls going on, and it's become almost the norm to share links around. And really the only people with a link like this should be the people in that class. So I know that all sounds really, really obvious, but probably worth reinforcing, just reminding the youngsters about. I can see, James, you're typing away and answering Pete's follow-up questions as they kind of come through. So
I'll just add to that. One of the problems is that some of the updates to the app have share link as a key feature.
Indeed,
which you don't want to have. But of course, we have to always remember we're using a commercial, what is a business tool, and the ability to share links is quite important. There are some other updates coming to all of this functionality. Microsoft are aware of the issue with the Android and iOS app, and they are trying to fix it. So they are going to fix it. So Pete, yes, they can see it. So in the browser, you do get a dot if someone is logged in. So if someone is logged in, and it will show you a colored dot. If you see a white dot, don't let them in because they're not logged in. So you're looking for a red, green, or yellow dot, and those are the things that show you that they're logged in and are on your tenancy. If you see a white dot, sometimes there's a white dot with a cross in it, you don't want to let them in.
And to be clear, James, the coloured dots are related to the presence functionality, which as you say, that's a good indication of they are part of your organisation.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay. Well, listen. We've probably got time for one more question. If there's anything from the floor, I can see Chris is typing. So I'll just, we suspect that some parents have shared the link for specific live lessons. Well, yes, they can. No, they shouldn't be doing it, I think would be our view. A link is just a link. So it's, you know, we had quite a lot of challenge from the people we work for initially, but the bottom line is it's just a link and can be copied and pasted via email. You know, we had discussions around stopping that kind of thing, but email. But of course, you know, it could be texted, it could be shared on any number of social media platforms. So I think the way we've approached that is to be quite forceful and with parents that shouldn't be happening, but also particularly at the primary age group, certainly sort of key stage 1, we've given lots of supportive advice around how parents should be working with young children, you know, particularly over the teaching of literacy, for example. So we've balanced it with lots of support. I mean, the bottom line is you wouldn't normally in a I don't know, a key stage 3 geography lesson have mum or dad peering around the door and you know, watching the teacher. So we should extend the same courtesy to teachers as they struggle with live lessons. I think you know, we trust them to work in the real world. We should trust them to work in this world. But it's just a link, Chris, I'm afraid, and it's ultimately shareable.
I thought so. I mean, we did address it and say, we've said please don't share the link. It's when it's support, you know, small group or one-to-one almost interventions that are going on all the time with kids that are at home. But then
sure.
You know how it works. My child's getting this, so my child will benefit from that. Can I have the link? So they share the link, but it's not for that child. So we've just said,
yeah, basically
one of our protocols is you don't share the link.
I agree. We've given the same advice.
Yeah. And to be honest, the children that shouldn't have been there just sat in the lobby waiting. They didn't get in. So yeah. Anyway.
Sure.
Cheers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, I'm really conscious of time. Let me just share my screen. Just want to make some closing remarks. So bear with me a second. I should have had this ready, and of course I was busy listening to James and Dan and didn't. Okay, here we go. So that one, just for time, I won't. Dan, are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
Great. So listen, I'll just make some closing remarks. Thank you so much for joining in. It was great to be able to answer your questions rather than kind of lead on our content. That's exactly what we wanted, really. If that was helpful, if that was useful, please let us know. We intend to run these, I think, weekly, if not fortnightly, kind of moving forward. So feel free to come back. Feel free to share it with colleagues in your school or indeed other schools. Happy to kind of help, really. I will ensure that the office emails this slide deck or this slide actually out, so you've got all these links rather than post them in the chat now. So if I can't speak highly enough of the EdTech program, and you know, we'd be delighted to work with you, but there are lots of other schools doing this work to share their work all around the country. So just moving through these links when you get them. The first one is how to sort of formally sign up for the program, and you can get more individualized work with one of us or indeed another organization through that scheme. The second two links there are firstly our United Learning sub-page of the EdTech demonstrator program, and then the third one down is the resource is our website, and the most important thing to point out there is the resources that I think Dan was speaking to at the start there, and that's just an open website. You're free to go to that and use that and share those kind of resources, and then the last link there is the YouTube channel, which again Dan talked about kind of briefly. Do follow those pages because they are regularly updated, not quite daily, but certainly weekly. So as we get requests for resources, we're trying to help out and just produce some kind of resources. So I'll just close with our kind of contact details. We have a United Learning inbox, which you're welcome to ping if you want more information about this scheme. Do go through that formal sign up if you want to formally sign up for it and choose United Learning. That's the formal way to do it. But if you want to have an informal chat before you do that, please do ping us an email. All of us are really active on social media, particularly Twitter. So our handles are there. That's not a plea for more followers. There's lots of useful stuff and lots of people helping each other out on Twitter, quite informally and quite fast actually. And we have a handle for United Learning Technology itself. So I'll leave those there, and when the slide deck goes out, you'll have those links. So James, thank you. Dan, thank you. I hope that's been really helpful. I was dying for something you couldn't ask, but you excelled yourself and answered them all. So thanks very much. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. I will finish there because it's 1 o'clock and we said we'd only do the hour, and conscious you've probably got to get back to teaching and classrooms. So good luck, and please stay in touch. If we can help any more, do let us know.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Really helpful. Bye.
Bye.